everybody. This is the Paranormal Rangers. We have Dale, we have Laura with us, and of course, the infamous Stan Milford Jr. and the infamous Jonathan Dover. Today's today's talk, we're going to talk about some very strange things that are going on with the with vortexes and with the recent solar flare activity and how that's currently affecting some people. And so I'm coming to you from an undisclosed secret location in Flagstaff, Arizona, where I have just finished getting my oil change. So I'm in the front of my truck if the background looks weird. And and my phone is precariously balanced on the steering wheel. And so if suddenly everything goes haywire, then you'll know my phone fell off.
Or you went through a vortex.
Yes, it got
Yeah,
lost.
right.
So, how do you want to kick off, guys? Oh, and also, just quickly, our best wishes to Michelle, who's not well at the moment. Hopefully, she'll be back with us next week.
And also, just a quick one as well. So, there's a lot of feedback in the chat, which is great. So, if you have any questions in the chat, want to ask anybody a question, just pop it in the chat and we'll get back to you as well. Really appreciate feedback and questions. So, yeah, here we go.
So, tell us
Also, the
about
word,
the solar activity, John. What's going on with that, and how are people reacting to it?
well, this started out kind of last week, and quite a number of people that I know have been experiencing problems with not only vertigo, but with sinus issues and other kind of what you would consider minor health issues, except for vertigo. Vertigo happens when your balance is the little hairs in your ear on the inside of the ear that help you keep balance. And when you get sinus stuff going on, your sinuses get plugged up, the world starts spinning and you start feeling sick. You feel dizzy. In some cases, you might even black out, which is not a good thing because you can fall and hit your head, and that's not good. You'll look like a assault victim. So just tell them, hey, you ought to take a look at the other guy, right? Um, but these things have been going on, and there's been an increase in solar flare activity recently with a lot of this flare activity just creating aurora borealis, the northern lights, in areas that are further south than they should be, and and then we're seeing a big increase. Both Stan and my families have seen it. We've talked to other people that are having some of the same issues, and they're going to the doctors, and the doctors are just saying, "Oh, here's some seasick pills. You can take these to kind of get away from the vertigo." And but it's really unusual. And some of them have told me that when they've been in close proximity to a vortex type situation, similar to Sedona, Arizona, or where a lot of the ley lines cross each other, where there's more energy present in different frequencies, um, then they experience some ill effects. And we've actually seen hikers that'll be hiking on a trail and hit one of these vortex areas and literally have to lay down in the dirt and collect themselves because the world just starts spinning around on them. Um, one of the things that you'll find in Sedona in particular is you go to any of the shops in Sedona and you can buy something called organite. And organite is used to kind of tame some of those frequencies and uh, and make it easier. And the people that have worn that have said that they can now they don't want to go to Sedona anymore, but they don't have that same feeling that they had before. So, there's something with that. I'm not fully briefed on organite, and I don't have one for myself, but I know a lot of people that have bought it. Maybe Laura and Dale, if you can
So
enlighten us.
yeah, so the organite, so organite's made with a resin form, and you can get all sorts of different things in organites, crystals, copper, and it basically the organite makes a circuit. So usually the organite's in a pyramid stance, and you can just cram in loads of different silver, copper, crystals. Majority of it is copper, but you basically place it into a circuit, and it becomes one circuit. So it like acts like a full crystal. So all of it gets activated and it goes through and creates like this mini vortex thing and surrounding toroidal field. So it kind of like balances energy out and makes people feel comfortable. There's another way which Andrew showed me to do as well. He does it with beeswax. So what he'll do is get loads of beeswax, fill it in a tray, and he'll put loads of different crystals. And I'm talking like 200 different crystals in this beeswax. Then he'll place single point quartz around it in a circle, then another one in the middle. And what it do, the beeswax, then you place it in the oven, then it hardens and forms, and it has the actual bee energy within it as well. And he's found that the actual using the wax creates more of a better circuit. Even though the resin's good, beeswax seems to hold a lot better. So he's talking about that, which is incredible. Laura actually has one, don't you, Laura? One of the beeswax tools.
Yes, we made one at one of his events. And the thing is, if you feel it's losing some of its resonance or power, you just pop it in the oven and melt the beeswax. Actually, we take it on a more, let's say, shamanic side, and we say prayers and revocations over this while it's cooling. And I've often used it actually in my healing room underneath the treatment table. But that's going off the subject a bit. I mean, this important thing we need to do when we're getting these sort of discordant energies and so on. I think you said it straight away, John, is ground, isn't it? You've got to ground yourself into the earth to get
Yeah.
yourself stable again.
And one of the things that I understand about this, especially since the resin is the most easily obtainable through mail order or whatever, um, my understanding is that when you put all these different crystals together and the resin is poured in and it solidifies, when the resin will shrink as it dries. And as it shrinks, those bits of crystals uh, rub against each other. And it has a piezoelectric type uh, uh, situation going on there where it's actually creating some low forms of energy and frequency.
Beautiful.
Have John Stan, have you walked into what you would consider like a vortex before, or extreme energy anomaly, and felt the
Um,
effects of that?
I've I've been in some locations where I've been affected by the energies there. Um, I don't know if that would be what people refer to as a vortex or something of that nature, but uh, for myself and for like John, we tend to be sensitive to various types of energies and frequencies, and I think that's one of the things, that a lot of people uh, that would classify themselves as an empath or a sensitive person, when these kind of uh, events, celestial events, are going on, it tends to affect them much more, um, and to the point where For some, it can even be a debilitating experience. I know for some, um, even just wherever they may live, they can be exposed to things like radon gas and stuff like that that has an effect, so to speak, on their well-being and how their body operates. So yeah, I think that's, the stuff that you do, Laura and Dale, when it comes to utilizing various tools such as crystals and minerals, and seeing the benefits of being able to use those things. It can greatly help uh, everyday function. And just like John said, there's things like organite and a whole host of other types of minerals that can be used to counter the negative effects of things like what we're experiencing with the solar radiation.
So there's, just as you say that, it's so I've got some hematite here. So these are like magnets which basically stick together, and we've got over like 400, 500 for combined, me, Laura, and Andrew. And basically, what I do is place these on my lap, and I put like a row of them, and it literally grounds me into my body, and it like clears my electromagnetic frequency. So whenever I do feel I'm going out the body, I place all the hematite magnets around me, and it throws me back into my body, and it makes me feel just clear again. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things, as Dale said, we use on combined healing to keep people in their bodies. Another one is to keep your feet warm. So
Oh
if
yeah.
someone's on a couch, yeah, we keep their
I
feet
always
warm.
had cold feet when I was younger all the time.
Which might be a tip for people who are feeling a little bit ungrounded and out their bodies. And it's interesting, isn't it? You're talking about this, we've got all these solar flares at the moment, which is activating the Earth's natural magnetic grid and so on. But that we have places, they're all over the world, they'll be in the US too. Like we have places like Avebury and Glastonbury, which can have beyond, earth nodes going into ley lines and things like that. So it's extra sort of powerful. And even normally without the solar flares, there are places that are actually should just be visited and not lived in. So people do live in Glastonbury and they do live in Avebury. But if you talk to people who live in Avebury is another like a similar sort of Stonehenge. It's actually bigger. And that's in Wiltshire as well. But if you talk to people who live there and who visit there and stay more than 1 or 2 nights, they definitely start to say they feel a bit weird, they feel a bit ungrounded. So now with all these solar flares going on and what you're saying, John, is these places are going to be really hyped up.
Yes.
I think so. I would even recommend our audience and people to go out and obtain materials, study materials, and learn about various minerals and crystals and how these different things can benefit, you as a human being, and what what and how these minerals and crystals can actually benefit, everyday life. And I do know that with some of the things that I use, uh, you need to really be cognizant that you need to, let's say even like a quartz crystal. Make sure that if you're obtaining this, let's say at a mineral or crystal show or a flea market or wherever you obtain that, make sure that you are resetting the energy for those particular items. I do know, and we've addressed this in the past, there is the potential that you can obtain something like that has the properties to hold memory and can cause negative experiences in relation to that. So please make sure that you are in there's a number of ways of resetting that and clearing it. You know, things like smudging and things like using other tools to reset it. But I would highly recommend that.
Well, Stan, it's like you just reminded me then of, when you go into like a crystal and mineral shop, all the people who go around and touch the crystals, and the
Oh
amount
yeah,
of the people. And I'm like, as I go in, I'm like not touching any of these. Like hundreds of people would have gone, oh, look at this skull, and everyone's
oh yeah,
touching it.
oh they
Like,
do. Everybody wants a touch.
yes,
Everybody, human. It's human nature to be
yes,
touchy
it is.
feely with these kind of things, and
Yes,
because a lot of them are visually very beautiful. They
yes.
attract you visually in other ways, and but like you said, you've got to be you, and especially if you're sensitive, you got to be very careful with that kind of thing because
And
some
if
of this stuff can be very powerful, very powerful.
and if you're working in those shops, if you speak to those people, they need to take regular breaks and get
Right.
out the
Oh yeah.
shop. It's yeah.
Right. These are tools that are often seen in various indigenous cultures, used by shaman and medicine men, as tools with ceremonial and healing practices and things of that nature. Some of them can be very, very powerful, though.
So would the Navajo and other tribes call these high energy places, let's call them, as sacred spaces, sacred places, sacred sites?
They could be considered sacred places. What I find really interesting is that you get places like Sedona where Native Americans did not build there, they did not live there. And we are told by medicine men that it's not because it was sacred, it was because of the energy that was present. And they recognized that they could go there occasionally and do various things there, but they didn't live there on a permanent basis. And I kind of liken that to, um, like if you built your house right under some high tension power lines and all that energy that's just leaking out of that thing is going to affect you. If you build a nice big deep basement in your house, and then build your house and there's radon gas there, that's going to have an effect on you. So there's a lot of natural things that are going on. I've seen locations where the ancients actually built some of their pit houses uh, in a uranium mining area. And the petroglyphs actually show that they were seeing people being born with polydactylism,
Wow.
with distended stomachs, with distended genitalia, and with 4 toes on one foot and 6 toes on the other, and the same with the hands. And you know, I mean, if you build your house on a radioactive pile, things like that are going to happen. And here it is
Well,
etched right into the rock.
one of the challenges is like what we just mentioned with these crystals. Visually, they're very attractive to you, and you do want to pick them up. You do want to touch them. Well, a place like Sedona, visually, you look at it and oh my gosh, the environment, it's beautiful. So it is attracting you to that area. So unknowingly, people may be attracted to a place like that without the understanding that hey, there's more to it than just what we see with the beauty, the aspect of it, and so
Well,
that's that's
interesting as well because so in England and Scotland they have so around the farmer's field like 300 years ago they built these stone walls. In England where you see them everywhere in the country in the hills, and there's been people
yeah.
who have been doing dowsing, and basically what they've realized is as they go to those stone wall, the ley line energy is all along the walls. and it feels like the farmers have done it intentionally to bring good fortune and good things to the crops. So all the old houses were built with the dowsing rods, and they're able to dowse around the area, see where the lines are. But nowadays, all these new houses are being built in the masses, and they're just being dumped wherever they want to put them. And you see it, don't you? I don't know what it's like over your end, guys, but Laura, our end, there's just hundreds and hundreds of new houses every few months going up in one site without any thought or anybody actually seeing if there's water under, if there's different energy pockets, and so on.
John and
Yeah.
I tend to hear, and feel that a lot of times modern science looks on the past and looks at the people as having been very primitive but I think, in a lot of situations, they were far in advance of some areas than we are today. Things like what you mentioned with those walls. And so.
I think they were
Yeah.
much more in touch with natural earth energies. Today in modern society, we have people, living feet, hundreds of feet off the ground, even. They're out of touch with the earth energies, and then they're not taught some of the things like dowsing. Some real, like, basic, simple skills. It's just lost. I mean, we've said this on many shows, how the stories aren't passed down, and it's the same with a lot of the skills of how to live in alignment with the earth energies just aren't passed down. And then people end up like over here, like Avebury, as you were saying, John, they're not places to be lived in. They're high energy places, and your indigenous wouldn't have lived there, and our indigenous didn't. They built the stones, or they had
Right.
stones there, however they came there, but they certainly didn't live there.
Yeah.
They
And
recognized energies. They had much more feel, didn't they?
yeah. And, we look at that and we say, well, that's not science. That's a feeling. That's spirituality, and science and spirit doesn't meet.
Yes.
But, you know, really taking a good hard look at it, we've lost a lot of spirituality. And we don't, and I'm not talking about organized religion. I'm talking about the spirit that you have in you that has specific needs that are not being met in our technological society, because we think, we've got 200 years under our belts of doing all this stuff. And you look at countries like China that have had 10,000 years to perfect medicine, and yet we say, well, we got 200 years, in America, in the US, across the pond here, and we're really something. We can give you drugs to block it off so that you don't feel the symptoms, and if it gets really bad, then we can cut it out of you. Whereas other things like Navajo medicine, they look at, hey, you need to take care of your body now, and you need to do the right things so that when you get old, your body will still support you. So I was going to tell you that one of my first jobs, I worked with a public school district as a maintenance man, and there were a lot of old timers there that worked. I was the young kid in my 20s, and I watched the boiler specialist take out dowsing rods, just these metal coat hangers, and he would hold them in his hand and walk, and these things would turn outward, and he'd say, "There's the water line," and he'd reach down and mark it with a paint sprayer, paint can, and he'd keep doing that until he had the whole line mapped out, and then he'd tell the guys, "Okay, you can start digging with the backhoe to get that line," and sure enough, there it was. And I saw that over and over, and I questioned him because to me that was sorcery. You know, you take a piece of wire in your hand and walk around, and the wire, goes one way or the other. And he says, "Here, try it." And so he put me on the same line, and a little further down, and sure enough, there it was. Right in line with where they dug it up. And I kept doing that and doing that because it was a novelty. It was amazing. And I learned then that, yeah, you can use that to find water. You can use that to locate pipes. Um, there's a whole range of things that you can use, and yet science looks at it and goes, "That's not possible according to science."
Well, just
John and I
imagine.
recently we visited Toronto, Canada, and visited with the Cree Nation and the Ojibwe people, First Nations. And during our visit there was a session that they held that utilized dowsing rods. Gave people the experience of seeing some of the capabilities of using dowsing rods. So um, for some, it may seem like a novelty, but to like what you mentioned, John, with the old timer, it's not a novelty. It's a tool that they use to be able to accomplish a task.
And the bottom line is it works.
Yep.
And that's the acid test, is does it work? And in my time, I wasn't into organite and other crystals. Um, and then I started seeing the results of what these crystals could do, as far as healing, and just it was just amazing things that you saw with it, that I started kind of, researching on my own. So I still consider myself a newbie. I'm still learning. And I always tell people that I'll be learning the rest of my life until they put me in a slot in the ground. And then maybe I'll be learning in a different dimension.
I love
When it
that.
comes
That's
to those
brilliant.
technologies, no matter how advanced you are, in a way, you're still a newbie because there is so much out there in relation to the use of these things that can really amaze you about the properties of some of these things.
There was a great that reminded me. So I went to Kefalonia in Greece and I got a T-shirt and it had this Greek writing on at the bottom. It says, "The only thing I know is I don't know nothing." So like sometimes I think that I have to be learning all the time.
When it
Oh,
comes to the paranormal, in a way,
Yes,
that's the way it is.
yeah,
yes.
You're
that
all
is.
learning something new and something that just you've seen these little emojis on your phone that has the brain and it looks like a atomic bomb going off, and that's the way some of these things work. It's just like kind of mind blowing. I think science has a long way to catch up.
Well, just
Yeah,
imagine.
I'm of the personally, my opinion, okay, and this is just my opinion. I think that civilization has risen to a peak of technology and destroyed itself. And then it's risen again and again and again because we don't learn from our past mistakes. They say that if
Correct.
you plow a field, you have to look back. Otherwise, you'll never plow a straight line. And I'm talking about hand plows, with a horse team, in the old way. And I've done that. We used to use that, on the reservation to plow a cornfield. And if you don't look back, that line is going to be curved. And so by proxy, you have a situation where we have to look at the past to see what mistakes were made and try to do better. And
I think
so
that's
that's
one of the
my
big focuses of indigenous cultures. native peoples, knowing where you came from. How can you know where you're going if you don't know where you've been and where you come from, who your people are, who, what was taught, what was learned, and like with many indigenous cultures, the history is oral and it's passed down. But if you don't know those things, how do you know where you're going? How do you know where you've been?
Well, that's it. And like writing your own story, when I wrote down my story of my childhood and the start of my spiritual journey, and I went back and wrote down what I went through, what I was going through that year, it made me realize that I started to know thyself. And one of the greatest things with spirituality is knowing thyself. And I realized like what I was doing with hindsight, foresight, and I was able to see myself in a bigger picture and understand who I was as a person. Because a lot of people go through life and they don't record the past, and they'll go to the later on in their life and they'll be like, I can't remember this, I can't remember that. But I think as much memory as we can remember from the past is important, because it tells you who you are today, where you've come, what lessons you've learned, and you can look back at the past and go, holy shit, look where I am today from where I was then. Really, really
Right.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that you know, in our life, a lot of times we're so blinded by going to and from work, paying the bills, getting the kids to school, those everyday tasks, that we're not looking around us. We're not, like John said, learning, picking up a book and reading and learning about the past, learning about technologies like these crystals and minerals, and really what our universe represents. Even with different spirituality that talks about having past lives and things of that nature. There's so much more to our universe and to our world than what we stop to realize. It's and just like what we talked about with the crystals and minerals and the capabilities. Sometimes it's mind blowing when you actually look into it, and especially what let's say ancient peoples were capable of. You know.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's deliberately set up, isn't it, as this sort of instant gratification and all this distraction, and in this 9 to 5 and rut, and keeping lots of people in survival. Because if you're that way, if you're kept in survival, then you don't often have the time or the inclination to go out and discover who you are,
True.
where you come from. And I love these people in the chat talking about ancestors, because I loved it when I did my family tree. I know with different spiritual paths have different types of ancestors. I understand that. I'm just talking about our DNA lineage ancestors and understanding our roots. And it's really it is fascinating, but I think it also keeps you in touch with your ancestors if you do something like a family tree and find out where you come from. Because I always feel that we are our ancestors' voices now. We're the ones now, aren't we, stepping forward to to do our great work, or however you want to label it. But I like to think the voices of our ancestors can still be heard, through these broadcasts, through people like Stan, John, and Michelle, and Dale, and myself. We like to bring that forward. Otherwise, the stories and things will be lost, and the natural way of living on Earth and aligning with the Earth energies and co-creating with the amazing universe that Stan is talking about. We don't want that lost in distraction.
That's it. And it's
John
something. Go ahead.
John
Go.
often John often uh, asks that people reflect on where they come from and what their peoples where they originate from. When people often ask, "Well, how can I smudge, or how can I bless, whatever it is, cleanse?" John, and I can let him elaborate a little more on this. What he tells them to go back and look at their culture and their peoples.
Yeah, what what we tell people, they've asked us over and over, should I start smudging? And you know, my answer to them is usually go in back into the history of your culture. Find out what they did along the same lines because all cultures had similar things that they did. Find
Right.
out what they did specifically and then take that as your own. And it has more meaning that way than just copying a different culture. You know, make it yours and make it personal. And we all have a background somewhere, you know, in without trying to sound radical, you know, Native American type stuff. Uh, our culture was stripped from us uh, by design. They call that assimilation. They thought that if they could get Native Americans to hoard money, to believe in a Christian God, to do all these different things, uh, their their culture would disappear, even their language would disappear, and they would cease to exist. They just become this homogenous uh, United States, you know, with a melting pot of cultures. And they didn't find out till later that those cultures, you find pockets of German culture, pockets of Scandinavian culture, pockets of Jewish culture, uh, you know, just all over the states. There are pockets of Italians, of every race you can imagine, with their cultural heritage intact. But the Native Americans were told you can't have a culture. And I was even told that to be a Christian and be Native American, you had to give up your culture because everything else attached to it would be considered, you know, satanic. And that's really not true. You go to any church, you'll find French celebrating their French cultures. You find Germans celebrating German culture. You know, every other culture can celebrate their beginnings,
Well,
but not us.
there was back, I don't know what year it was, but in churches they actually used to do Reiki, didn't they? When they first opened the churches, you could go in and get a Reiki session. I don't believe that if that's happening or not. You guys will probably know more than me. But at one point in time, you can actually go to the churches to get Reiki. But that's completely gone now, I think, in England.
Yeah,
I think a lot of
the
those things have been erased or attempted to erase them and hide them, from people. But I really feel that these differences we're talking about in culture, to me, that's what makes the world great. That's what makes America great.
yep,
Is that there's a bringing together of different cultures, the foods, the music, the art, everything that goes, you know, into that culture. The differences, that's what makes the world beautiful. And going and visiting different places. John and I, we have a rule that when we travel, we don't eat what we can find back home. We try different things. When we travel to Scotland, trying haggis and,
Yes,
and, and
yes.
black pudding and these kind of things. That's what's amazing, listening to the music, the world would be a very sad place if everybody was like what was attempted with the Nazis, and everybody dressing the same and having the same haircut, hair color. That would be so boring, and so I don't know that you could live like that, you know?
Well, I think that's also a beautiful way of saying you're honouring and respecting another culture's ancestors. Because where
Right,
did those recipes come from? Where did the music come from?
right.
right.
is what they've taken forward from their ancestors. And we all like to have all the ancestors honored.
True. True. Yeah.
It's like when you hear the Scottish bagpipes. For me, when I was a kid, when I first heard them, I got quite emotional listening to them. For some reason, there was just something ingrained to me. As soon as I heard the bagpipes, I was like, "Holy, what is that? Like, what is that
Yeah.
noise?" And to go to Scotland, and like when we did the tour, and you guys have gone, when you go around and you just randomly, like in synchronicity, walk into a bagpipe player playing a song, and it's just,
Yeah,
yeah, it's so unique and beautiful.
it is.
Not
It
only
is
that,
very beautiful.
visiting these places, these castles, and even the cemeteries and stuff, the energy that you can experience there from those people that once were here, were living here, that had the culture and the teachings. Um, it's amazing. There's no words in some cases for those experiences.
And
That's
again, it needs to be stressed when you go to these places. Yes, some of them have unusual energies that you can feel. I've been to numerous places where I felt so much energy that my teeth would start to buzz. And then I know that there's an energy field there. Um, but you go to some of these places and you can actually set yourself up for not a good time. If you go in and you say, "Oh, this looks spooky," um, or you go in and say, "I understand there's ghosts here, and I want to have an experience. I want to get scared." Um, and that's what it's all about, really, is this little bit of adrenaline rush that we get by the fear. And so we look at things like that, and we can influence some of those things to actually happen. And
You
so in some
manifest.
cases, yeah, you
You
manifest it.
manifest.
And so you have to be careful. Go and experience those places and energies for the positive things that they are, and try not to bring that negative element into it, because what you put out there is what you'll get back. It's just like if you go down the road and you're upset because other vehicles are not doing what you think they should be doing, and you start getting road raged, you'll start driving faster, you'll start getting angry, and pretty soon you're in the position of other people road raging on you. And one of them might just pull a gun out and start shooting. So we can
John
create
and
those
I,
situations.
John and I, as Navajo Rangers, part of our duties and responsibilities was the protection of these ruin sites, the pictographs and petroglyphs, all of the archaeological related uh, uh, stuff there on the reservation. And we were we were taught early on that when you visit those locations, those are sacred locations. A person lived there, a living person had lived there. And so we learned early on to tread lightly and to have respect for those that have gone before us in those locations. And it served us to, just like John said earlier, um, having a positive mindset going into those locations, and being able not to be able to get, visiting there and not becoming sick, even though maybe you could be, a sensitive person to those things, but you're capable of, like John said, going into those locations, having respect for the past, having respect for others, that have come and gone before us.
So it feels like what you're saying, Stan, is you're going to that place with no intention to change it in any way, but just be respectful and be in an experience. And a lot of people have disrespect for a lot of sacred sites where they go in and they'll try and change things around, or they'll go in with rage, anger, sadness, and they'll just go into the place and dump all the shit into the site. And you find that a lot of people do that. They'll go to these sacred sites without getting themselves in a balanced position, and they'll go there and just dump all of the shit into the land. So sometimes you can go to land and you can feel it, can't you? Some weird energies, or someone's just dumped a big pile of negative crap, basically, into the land, and you're like, oh, yeah, yeah.
Just like what you said earlier about visiting a mineral and gem show, and people walking around touching the various minerals and crystals, and just like you said, more or less, they may have a negative attitude going into that show, and then they pick up a rock or whatever, and they may be, just like you said, kind of doing an emotional dump into that particular object.
Yeah, and people can do that to us too.
True.
We call them psychic vampires. They can actually come to you, and you've seen this before, I'm sure. Somebody comes to you, oh, my life is just horrible. My girlfriend left me, blah, 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 this and that. And it just goes on and on. It builds up. And every time you see them, because you're nice enough to listen, you get dumped on. And other people start seeing that too, especially with empaths, because you can sense people's feelings and you want to help them in some way. And this builds up, all this negative energy builds up in you. And what do? How do you release that? And so you have to be careful. There are limits to what you can take on your shoulders. And at some point, you have to kind of say, I really appreciate it, but not today. I need a break. I need to recharge. I need to change frequencies here.
John and I, having worked on the Navajo reservation, in a lot of the programs, there would be these individuals that would have toxic personalities. They have no customer service training or even that kind of thought in how they do their job in serving the public. And we would often have to deal with that kind of individual, not only in the working environment, but then going out into the field and trying to enforce the law and trying to help people. You're kind of caught right between all of that,
What are some of the ways you maintained your boundaries without going too deep into your own, personal practices?
Well, sometimes you get so much of that you have to disengage, but you do it in a polite manner that you break that contact and you just move on. The worst thing you could do is to provoke it, to make it worse, or be what's the word I'm looking for? To butt heads with other people, or try to solve their problems for them. What I found out, one of the best sergeants I ever had when I was doing police work in a border town, I had a sergeant named David, and I would call him and I'd say, David, what do I need to do? Because I was a rookie at the time. And he'd come over there and he'd say, well, what would you like to do? What do you think we should do? And he'd put it back on me to figure out how to make that decision. And without realizing it, I was making decisions. And he'd say, I'd tell him, I want to arrest that guy. Okay, let's go arrest him. Where I want to do this, I want to do that. But he'd always put it back on you to make those decisions. Those are decisions that you need to make in every situation. And, but don't be confrontational with it. Just be polite. and try to extricate yourself from that if it's becoming too much. And but don't get angry with people to do it, because now that it's affecting you, and
Well, the
you're
old idea that the adage of fight fire with fire doesn't always work, and John, having a background in martial arts, and how you use an opponent's energy for what you need to do. And a lot of times, we went through training, uh, uh, what was called verbal judo, and we learned to be able to de-escalate situations based on the language and the use of the vocabulary of that individual, and so yeah, I think a really good parent is going to do exactly what John was talking about, what David was doing with him, with let's say a teenager, and putting it back on that teenager. Well, what would you like to do in this situation? What do you think is the good thing to do in this situation? And it lets them, use those cognitive skills to try to figure out, what works. We're not perfect. We never are going to be. And those solutions aren't always going to be in black and white. Sometimes you may be subjective in the way that you find the answer to, or a solution to whatever it is.
Well, it teaches intuition as well, doesn't it?
yeah.
You
Very
know,
much
it
so.
teaches to access that inner wisdom that we do all carry, but we get cut off from it.
Very true.
And one of the things, Laura, that you started with is you were talking about grounding.
Mm.
And just for everybody's information, we do not ground ourselves anymore. We wear shoes with leather soles, with rubber soles, with, silicone soles. We are insulated from the ground. And that negative energy can continue to build and actually make us sick. And
True.
so, I have been told that one of the best things you can do, take your shoes off for about 30 minutes, go stand on a lawn, put your feet in the dirt, allow yourself to be grounded. They actually make grounding kits. I have one that goes underneath my sheet at the foot of my bed, and it's plugged into the grounding receptacle on the wall plug, and I can actually sleep and ground myself at night and wake up and feel better in the morning. So, but we don't do this very much. And there's all kinds of electromagnetic energy out there. If you were to take a trifield meter and where you're at right now, just light it up and look at all the different fields of energy that are out there, radio frequencies, power frequencies, leaks in your computer frequencies and your Wi-Fi's and everything else, your cell phone
Radio
stuff,
waves, all
radio
kinds of
waves,
radio
your
waves.
favorite
We're
FM
bombarded.
station. And
You almost can't
we
escape it.
yeah, and we need to have a way to get rid of these things as they build up in us, and grounding ourselves is one of the best ways to do it. And it's cheap. Doesn't cost anything.
Well,
But
also, like,
watch out for the bullheads if you're if you're around Gallup.
Yeah, we call them landmines.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
and a little tip if you're picking up and taking on a lot of negative energy is a salt bath, because salt is a great neutralizer, isn't it, guys?
Oh yeah.
So a few handfuls of a crystal salt in your
In a
bath
bathtub. Yep.
for at least half an hour, we say, and then rinse it off afterwards because it can be very drying to the skin. And also, it does pull
Some
out
crystals
toxins.
And
some
also,
crystals you can actually bathe the crystals with water and the salt to draw out and neutralize those existing
Yes.
energies.
There's many ways that should be taught,
Oh yeah,
at school, should be taught to children about how to maintain your own energy field, because we're all responsible for our own energy field. Like you were saying, John, about not dumping on others, that we're all responsible for maintaining that through good health and many other ways of doing it, and clearing it and cleansing it, like even swimming in the sea.
right.
Salt cleansing there, or a waterfall, anything to keep.
People
It's
used to travel to the Great Salt Lake out near Michelle's homeland, and for that very thing, to be able to immerse themselves in that water and neutralize the different energies and stuff. And
There's
I
a good
think it's very critical to just what you said, that we teach children about these things, because I think it starts at a very early age.
yes,
These practices, just like what John said about grounding, and that becomes ingrained in how you are as a person, that you need to do these practices, these things, to have well-being and to be a healthy person,
a good one.
spiritually,
So,
mentally, physically.
So a good one to add is salt on the router or Himalayan salt lamps. So placing a
yeah,
Himalayan salt lamp next to the router so it can just absorb some of the stuff coming out, or having Himalayan salt lamps right next to your bed space. That's a really good way of kind of neutralizing the energy around the bed.
or TV.
right.
Yeah.
And so just so everybody knows, yes, there is solar flare activity going on, more than we usually see. There are vortex situations where there are energy fields that can get more and more energy and manifest in various ways. And the frequencies at these locations can vary. And so the results of those energy fields and frequencies can have different effects on different people. And
Can we
so,
can I suggest that we look at some of the comments and maybe see if there's something we can address? One person talked about going to the local cemetery and how beautiful it is there. And I think that people need to look at that, and it's very important. Cemetery isn't always this dark and scary place. I mean, we all at some point, most people are going to end up in a cemetery,
Yeah,
and
we definitely
so
are.
it shouldn't be something that we're afraid of.
Yeah.
Thank you for all the wonderful comments, though, to people that made comments today. I appreciate that.
yeah, I'm working off my cell phone in the front of my truck, so I can't actually see the comments. So in that respect, I have blinders on.
Mm. Uh, some
And there,
person said ancient deities are responsible for what's going on today, and what people refer to as ancient deities, those are energies and spirits. John had mentioned before that the Hopi and the Zuni have a lot of different kachinas, and these were viewed in some situations as individual gods, and maybe those energies are protective. Maybe they are there to guide us, and not something to look at as a negative thing. So people comment about Humphreys Peak being the home of the sacred twins, and I think there's a lot of places in in the world that are very sacred. Yeah, especially it was sacred to those people that existed in the past, and in a way they'll be sacred in the future. So anyway,
Wow.
thank you for the all wonderful comments.
What an incredible show. Really, really inspiring. I've been smiling and laughing all the way through.
Oh yeah. Well, we wish Michelle returned to good health very quickly, and thank you for Michelle taking care of things. And so anyway, thank you.
And
Thank you
also,
all.
thank you.
if so, for those listening, just before we say goodbye, please drop a subscribe, a comment, a like. because it really does help with the algorithm, so this show can reach more people.
Oh, one thing. There was a misspelling on the title page. So
an anomaly on the anomaly.
Yeah, there you go.
So Paranormal
We'll get that
Rangers,
corrected.
yes, Paranormal Rangers can be reached at paranormalrangers.com. They have a Facebook page and a membership and a YouTube channel. So as Dale said, yes, please like, subscribe, etc. And we will be back next week. Stan, thank you very much. Any last words?
The book's coming out October 1st, and the Paranormal Ranger. Looking forward to that. We're still doing a lot of promotion and stuff like that. This weekend is the Gallup Indian Ceremonial in Gallup, New Mexico, and we're going to be out there giving people some of these postcards and stuff. And also, hello to Dale's little one that's there on his lap.
So this is Opal. Do you want to say hello to everyone? Do you want to say hello?
Hello.
This is Opal.
Hello. Hi. Hello.
So, John, any last words? Thank you, Stan.
Yeah, thank you everybody for being a part of this, and we hope we provided some information. We hope we were entertaining. We love doing this. We love to smile and laugh, and we're glad you're with us.
Thank you. And if anybody has any ideas for any topics, anything you'd like the guys to talk about, I can't promise they'll do it, but if you've got some suggestions, then please maybe put it on the Facebook page, or you can always email. What's your email, guys? What email do you use? Michelle's?
Well, for us, for me and Stan, we've been using Paranormal Rangers 86515 at gmail.com. So,
Okay.
and the 86515 is the area code for Window Rock, Arizona, which is the capital of the Navajo Nation.
Cool. Brilliant. Okay. Wonderful. So I think, any last words, Dale? You're muted. You're muted.
Sorry. So can I just double check? Was that paranormal8165 at gmail.com?
With an S.
Paranormal
Rangers.
Paranormal Rangers.
Okay, yeah.
86515 at gmail.com.
865.
That'll get you to me and Stan, and we check it every now and then.
Okay. So I've put that in the chat, so that's available in the chat there.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's it. That'll work.
Wonderful.
Thank you, everybody.